It's true.
Like a witch recipe for like viruses and flus.
How to heal yourself with food. I mean, this is exactly what this guy was talking about, because, here's somebody who's like me. He worked in pharma for so long as a research scientist. And then for me, it was in communications afterwards. But like, you spend so long in pharma and they're using these very things, but like I said, they isolate these compounds. And when you isolate, you're taking away this beauty that Mother Nature created. Like, it's whole for a reason. We think about, like, our bodies. Like, we're like, and I don't know how many cells we are. We're trillions of cells that like form into these like organs that function on their own. Our lungs breathe, our stomach digests, our brain sends signals, and like all these things are happening, and they're happening in concert, but they work together. If you stopped one, you affect another system, but you don't know that, right? So it's the same thing with our foods.
And it's the same thing with humans. I mean, isolation is like the number one way to impact mental health and wellness is like isolate people, so I just feel like isolation as a concept is really
100%.
Yeah.
Isolation. I mean, this is, as we're talking about COVID, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about with this was gut health. And I really want to come back to this because I want to get a few more things in the pot, and then we'll come back to it, because I think that it's, again, coming back to what our natural remedies are and how we heal with the earth. We, I think, as a human race, are combative and consumptive when it comes to dealing with the earth, right? We take what we want, and then we're like fighting. We're always with war. We're war with our weeds. We're war with whatever, like we're at war. We're combative with it all.
Wow.
And because we have this kind of like mentality about the earth, we've forgotten how important that diversity and that richness and like that balance of interplay. Like, think about just a prey and a predator. They know how to keep themselves in balance so that neither go extinct. And when they do go extinct, when they do go out of balance, is because something else in the environment has gone out of balance, right? Like, everything operates together because they function together. We're the only beings that have kind of removed ourselves from all of this.
Yeah, hoarding resources.
Yeah. Okay, I wish you could smell this because it's so fragrant. There's so many spices popping and coming about. The onions are a little translucent. Let's see if you can, I don't know if you can see anything, but they're just slightly translucent. And now what we're going to do is add the lentils. So now what I'm using is brown rice. This is long grain brown rice. This is brown basmati rice. Typically, Kitchari would use basmati rice. Basmati rice is like a long grain white rice. When it's longer grain, it has a lower glycemic index. So basically, it has sugars that are better for us, like in terms of like it's not going to spike our blood sugar. Brown rice is, obviously has the hull and everything. So there's, it's better for our digestion. And one of the things with the Manipura, with the solar plexus chakra, is whole grains. So think really, complex carbohydrates. That's what we want. So I always use brown basmati, and then we're going to use yellow lentils. Now, all lentils have different properties. They all have a relatively same amount of protein, same amount of like things like that. But what they have is a different cooking kind of method. Yellow and red break down a little bit more easier. Black tends to stay whole. Green peas, it's things like that. Now, yellow lentils are great for Kitchari because they're going to break down. Now, let me put this in. So one of the most important aspects of this is to soak the lentils and to soak the rice. So I put them together, half a cup of rice, 1 cup of lentils, and you submerge it all in water, and you're going to soak it. Now, you've ever had food like beans or lentils that make you gassy, it's because they didn't soak the lentils or beans. Soaking is essential because there's anti-nutrients, they call them. They're called anti-nutrients in beans and lentils that prevent you from digesting them. That's why it causes gas. So you soak it for at least half an hour. I actually soak mine for longer. It doesn't really matter. Half an hour is nice, good enough. Soak it, drain it, rinse it one more time to make sure you've gotten rid of those anti-nutrients. Just give it a quick rinse, and then it's ready to cook with. Okay, so that's when it's ready to cook with. So always make sure, no matter what food you're eating, like, if you're having beans and rice, like Mexican beans and rice, you're having, whatever you're using beans for, whatever you're using lentils for, soak them, and you're going to improve your digestion. So if you've added a pita, you've soaked your lentils, you've soaked your rice, and we're also now going to add miso. So this is actually the Japanese magic. And, you don't think about, using miso in like foods outside of like, Japanese foods or like miso broth. But miso is one of the most important gut health foods that we have. And again, we'll come back to this. But I'm going to add about a tablespoon of miso into this. Oh, actually, you know what? I don't want to add the miso yet because I got to bring this to a boil. So you don't want to boil miso. Miso, if it's boiled, it will reduce the properties. So
what's that?
So you remember my wonderful vegetable stock that we always make? Take the trimmings, the ends, and then when you have that, you make your stock. You basically boil all the trimmings that we've talked about: onion ends, zucchini ends, carrot greens, whatever you have. Make a stock out of it by boiling it in water with some spices if you want, some salt. And now you have stock to use. So I've added 4 cups of stock to this. If you're doing it in a slow cooker, add 6 cups. But I've added 4 cups. And what we're going to do is bring this to a boil and then let it simmer at covered for 30 minutes. One other thing that I'm going to add to this, another Japanese ingredient, is kombu. So kombu is a seaweed. It's just a big old piece of seaweed. Now, this is for umami. And umami, as I mentioned, is like a taste receptor on our mouth, but it's what actually makes us feel satisfied with food. What's really also important is this also helps break down proteins. Just adding this to your beans will break it down. And so you get all the protein you want out of your beans and lentils, and you don't have any of those irritating things that happen with it. So stick that in. I'm going to turn it on medium to high heat to bring this to a boil. Once it's boiling, then I'm going to turn it down and we'll let it cook covered for 30 minutes. I'll uncover it, and then, so there's a few more things to add, but that's good for now.
Great. Good job. You got it all.
Thank you. I know, I got to get this on the stove. Let's get this cooking. And we're good to go.
It was like, okay, I got to get everything in the pot. We can't talk a lot.
I know. Well, this is one of those, like I said, you cook it in a slow cooker, you got all your work done for you. But if you cook it stovetop, like if you read recipes, they'll say between 30 to 45 minutes. But if you're properly making it, you want everything to break down because, again, you want this to be a simple food to digest. And like I said, this is an ancient Ayurvedic recipe. I've mentioned this story in my writings, preparing for this episode, but I was really stuck. I was really stuck onto what to make for the Manipuri chakra. There it is. That was my test, as I was adjusting and playing with this recipe. The money. And you can see the bright yellows, right? Yeah. Like, Manipuri chakra is represented by the yellow. Yeah, your hat. It matches the exact color of that Kitchari right there.
My Kitchari hat. That's what I'm going to call it from now on.
The Kitchari hat?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. But, when you think of yellow foods, it's like, it's also related to, the digestive properties that are associated with the solar plexus. So it's simple carbs. So think like banana, pineapple, mango, like fruits, and then complex carbs. So like brown rice. You could even do things like quinoa, though, because quinoa digests like a carb, even though it's a seed. You can, think of any like oats, any of these complex carbs. And I was just struggling with what to make. All I could think of was like breakfast, like oats with like banana on top or something. Wasn't satisfying me. It wasn't hitting the spot. Yeah. It wasn't exactly the diet. It wasn't stimulating my digestion.
Yeah.
So I was in meditation one day, and I called upon my ancestors, and specifically my grandmothers, who I want to show you a picture. So this is my dad's mother. She passed, I think, like when I was 15, and this is my mom's mother, and she passed in my early 20s, sometime when I was in grad school. But I never really had much of a relationship with them. They spoke really old dialects of Hindi. Like my mom's grandmother spoke an old dialect of Punjabi, and my dad's mother spoke Hindi. But for some, like my parents never taught me our native tongue, and so having to deal with the language barriers, and then also with what my dad was keeping me away from my family and things like that, and really feeding me with stories about things, and so I never really had a relationship with them. And I've really felt them in my life over these past few years, as I've maybe they've been with me this whole time, or maybe they're really with me right now as I'm really kind of embracing who I am and stepping into my power. I called on them and I said, I don't really cook Indian food. Do you have something for me that's inspired by our lineage? And literally, it was like seconds, they said Kitchari. And so, yeah, I'd never received an answer that fast. And, Kitchari is something that I make, but I don't make it that often, so it wouldn't have been top of mind for me. And I'm very grateful for them for answering my call, my request for help.
That's so wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And then, we have all our stones and stuff. I'm wearing tiger's eye. That's also, represented. And I have my beautiful citrine here.
I have
yours.
Honey.
Ooh, look at that sphere.
Yeah. There's a rainbow in there somewhere. Yeah,
There's a rainbow in there?
Yeah, I got this the last time I was in LA.
Ooh. Where is that? What store?
So I have this awesome relationship with the stones where they just basically tell me where to come find them, because I've got different spots in LA. But one of my favorite spots to buy crystals actually is Follow Your Heart, which is one of the oldest organic grocery stores in all of Los Angeles. It's in the San Fernando Valley. So it's like in between my mom's house and our friend Lisa's house. It's on, I think it's, on Sherman Way.
Very cool.
So they have a great selection of crystals. So the last time I was in LA, I got this one.
Nice. And for those of you that don't know, Ariel is an LA native that has transplanted to Oregon. So.
Well, I'm technically Albuquerque, New Mexico native.
That's true. That's right. I forgot about that part.
I mean, if you want to use the word native, but.
Native, that's true. Where you were born, that's true.
Yeah, that's where I was born. Yeah. But yes, I did grow up in LA.
That's awesome.
Yeah, in the Valley.
In the Valley. Yeah, as I'm learning to explore, it took me some time to really discover the magic that exists in Southern California. I mean, it's brimming with it. It's ripe with it. It's everywhere. Yeah. But it took me some time to tap into it. And I think that is partially, growing up on the East Coast, especially most of my time in New York City, you're handed everything. Like, it's right in front of you. If you're like, I'm into this, I'm going to be into this now. There's like something for it right down the street. Like, you don't really have to search. Here there's definitely the exploration. And I really, talk about stepping into power. When I really started to accept LA as my home was when I really began stepping into this power of knowing that I can do this. Speaking of the the affirmation that comes with the solar plexus is the I can.
Yeah.
We talked about, I am with, our root, I feel with our sacral, and now we're in I can do this.
Yeah.
Which I think makes sense for this is where we harness our power. This is where we break down this food that becomes the energy of our body. This is where we really have a stepping into our power. And for me, the digestive center is one of the most important areas. So, the Manipuri chakra not only rules digestion in terms of the stomach, but it's also things like adrenal glands. And so we talk about things like fatigue. When we are in our power, we're naturally motivated. We're not drained. We're not drained of our energy. And you think about what we do as humans is we rely on substances like caffeine, these things that we extract from plants in isolates, again, isolating, the parts of plants, enhancing it for the caffeine, enhancing all these things so that we can have that, what I used to call false power, because it's oh, I can't get the energy up myself. Let me have some caffeine. It's going to give it to me. But when we are aligned within our chakras, when our solar plexus is in balance, then that natural aspect of motivation, of power, of energy is there. And a lot of that comes from the fact that we're not spending energy digesting our food. And so that's why it's a balance of the types of foods you want to put in. You don't want to have completely digested food all the time. You also want to have things like, greens and fibers that are raw, and you want to have a mixture, but you want to make sure that you're giving your stomach a break.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting to think about, because I usually think about things within a very broad context of what's our interaction with our environment, right? So the organism environment relationship. And when I think about digestion, and also being in my power, I think about, I'm a trauma-informed therapist. So everything for me is through a trauma lens. And when we're activated or when we're triggered, we stop digesting. When our parasympathetic nervous system is activated, we're in a resting and a digesting place. But when we're activated, the energy leaves our center and it goes out to our extremities in preparation for fight or flight. Yeah. Right. So I think of it in that context too, of being in my power also means I'm regulated. It also means I feel safe. It also means that where I'm located in my environment is a good fit, that the world around me feels safe. So I like to bring that into the conversation too.